kind of want to start in a broad sense. If you can kind of give an update on the current status of the investigation into Lori Paige's disappearance.
Well, the current status is that the investigation is still ongoing, and the reason for really wanting to talk to the community today is just to remind them that, you know, our detectives are relentless, and that we are never going to give up. We want to make sure that our community doesn't forget about Lori as well. And so on the 1-year anniversary of her going missing, we're just making sure that our community knows that we are still very, very hard at work on this case, and that we're not going to stop until we bring closure to this case completely.
Chief, have you had any one-on-one? I haven't been here for as long as Lori has been missing, but have you had these type of one-on-ones or sit down or talking to the community in this type of setting or in community setting? I would love to know, like, what does it look like for you being a part of this case? It's garnered a lot of attention.
Sure, it certainly has, and I've certainly talked with our media partners over this last year. We've done that through a variety of means. I certainly get asked about it a lot in the community, and have talked about it at a lot of the speeches I do in the community, because we know that it's the community involvement that is ultimately going to bring this case to closure. It's always that one little piece of evidence. It's always that one little thing that somebody didn't think it was important, you know, and then they eventually bring that information forward. It's usually that little piece of information that connects all the dots for us and brings that picture into focus as to exactly, you know, where Lori is and what happened to her.
There's a balance of information that you all can share with the community
Sure.
versus what you cannot, and
Right.
many of the times it's to preserve the integrity of the investigation.
That's correct.
But at the same time, to a community who may not know this, it may come off as you all not doing anything.
Sure.
So tell us about that balance. What does that look like for you?
It's a tough balance. It's tough for us to do because we pride ourselves at the Tallahassee Police Department on being as transparent as we can possibly be. But there are factors that go into open and active investigations, and the continuing investigation and the prosecution, you know, working with the state attorney's office, if in fact it gets to the level of a prosecution for a crime, then we have to be very careful of how we proceed with that information. So at times it seems like we are being guarded with that information, and because of the nature of the investigation, we have to be. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to share it with our community, and I can assure our community as soon as that information becomes available and is okay to share and not jeopardize the investigation, you know, or in any way, shape, or form, that we will share that information. We will get that information out just as soon as we possibly can.
As we sit here at the 1-year mark, is there any significant leads or developments in the case that you could share now that we're here at the 1 year?
Well, there's no specific lead that I can share in the case because of the ongoing nature of it. What I can tell you is that we do have leads, that we are following up on those leads. I also want to make sure that our community understands that we pride ourselves in being the best. I say all the time, we have the best people in the world working right here at the Tallahassee Police Department, and the International Association of Chiefs of Police has recognized our homicide unit as the best in the world. The homicide unit is working with SVU, the Special Victims Unit in this case, as well as our robbery detectives. So we have a conglomerate of detectives that are working on Lori's case. And so I know that the best people in the world are working on this case, and I know that they are relentless in their pursuit of bringing this case to closure. So our community can rest assured that we are doing everything we can do. We're following up on every lead. And to prove that even further, we had the FBI as well as NCMEC, which is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and Team Adam, all come in and look at everything that we've done in this case and review this case for us to see if there's anything that we missed, anything that we could do that we haven't done, or, you know, just recommendations on things further that we could do. And all three of those organizations said emphatically that we had done everything, that they were very impressed with the investigation and the thoroughness of the investigation, and they didn't have a single suggestion for us to do something beyond what we've already done. So at this point, it's just a matter of tying up those loose ends and seeing kind of where all those pieces are. But again, it's that plea to our community to get the community to understand that somebody out there has that one piece of information that is going to bring closure to this case, that is going to help us find Lori, that is going to bring this case to closure. And that's what we want. That's what our community wants. So anytime a person goes missing, it's tragic, but especially when it's a 12-year-old.
I think it's fair to say everyone wants Lori to come back home. Everyone
Certainly.
wants her to come back home alive. You mentioned the homicide unit being
Sure.
involved in this case. What did that conversation look like when it comes to them being involved and other resources that you all have allocated, knowing that it has been a year since she's been reported missing?
Sure, I don't want our community to read too much into the fact that our homicide detectives are assisting with this case. When we get these types of cases, we bring in all hands on deck. And so every person that's on our person side of the investigation, even some people on the property side, will all come together and form these teams, and they do task lists, of things that they need everybody to do. So, what I say by saying that is it's all hands on deck. It's everybody there. It's our experts in all of those fields that are coming together to bring, their expertise to that case. And it just means that we're fully committed to finding what happened in this case, bringing Lori home, and bringing closure to our community.
And when you speak about commitment and resources, how have you all, if you all have, tried to be strategic with the outreach of Lori Paige? Every demographic has a different statistic
Sure.
that surrounds them, and for Lori being a young woman, or not even a young woman, a child.
Yeah.
And being a black child and
Sure.
being a girl, like those are statistics that puts her, unfortunately, into what we've seen, a category of folks who have been underrepresented as far as media coverage goes, has been underrepresented as far as resources allocated
Sure.
to them and their communities. Knowing that, what have you all done to make sure she's getting all the resources that she deserves while she's missing to be found?
No, that's a great question and great points. And what I can say proudly is that we have spared no expense in Lori's case, and we wouldn't in any other case either. Those demographics that you spoke of can't have any bearing in how we investigate a case, especially a case of a child. So this is a tri-state investigation. We have family in 3 different states and friends in different states. Our detectives have been to all of those states multiple times following up on this investigation. Like I say, we've called in experts. So we've spared no expense in this investigation, because how do you put a price on any of that? You certainly can't on a child's life. And so, we've made sure that we've done everything that we need to do. We've flown detectives all over 3 states, and stayed as long as they need to stay there to do what they need to do in those areas. So I can assure our community that every single person that goes missing is important to us. Every single person, regardless of demographics, is a human being that we are going to stop at nothing to bring them back to safety in our community.
Visibility means a lot when it comes to investigations.
Sure.
And sometimes visibility is not seen by the community in the beginning, but that does not mean that you all aren't doing anything.
Correct.
But sometimes it could mean that you're not doing anything unless we
Sure.
ask the question. So my question is, there was a critique in
Sure.
the earlier portions of when she was missing of a lack of visibility. Could
Sure.
you address that critique of a lack of visibility of searching for her that some community members had for your department?
Sure. Like I say in everything, we're not perfect. So we take every case, and at the end of that case, we critique that case to see what it is we could have done better, things that we should have done that we didn't do, or just things that we could do better. That's one of the reasons we called those 3 organizations in that I spoke of to look at our investigation and see many times, like you said, there are many things going on in investigation which just aren't public. People just don't know about them. It's like the analogy of, I never see an officer in my neighborhood. Although we can show time and time again where there's officers constantly in the neighborhood, they're just not at the time and place where you're there and they're there and you see them. Doesn't mean they're not there. It doesn't mean they're not working. They are working around the clock. And what we know in this investigation is that from day one, we started this investigation and we started the canvassing, and then we go back and we look at things and we do more canvassing and we bring in more resources, and whatever that may take, whether it's the 120 person search of the San Luis area, bringing in cadaver dogs to search certain areas. Any and every lead that we've gotten, we've followed up on that completely. And that started at day one. So we'll critique this when we're done with the investigation. Now's not the time to do that. But we'll critique it when the investigation's over and just look at, okay, how can we do things better? And as a national leader in law enforcement, that is something we do every day. And we have to do every day to make this agency continue to excel. If we're going to get better, we can't be stagnant. We have to be looking at the things we do and how we do them and making changes. One significant change that came up in the midst of this investigation was the fact that we don't use runaway anymore on our missing persons flyers. And that was just something that in being briefed in one of the many briefings that I've gotten on this case, the question came up, why do we do this? What's the significance of putting that on there? And I just didn't like the fact that it was on there, because for some people in our community, that may lessen the severity of it. If they see runaway, they think, oh, not a big deal, let's not waste a lot of resources on that. When in essence, that really has nothing to do. We know people run away for a variety of cases. Maybe they are just a rebellious, youth or child. Maybe there's a really bad situation at home. Maybe, there's mental issues involved. There's all different kind of things that play into why someone may run away from home. But it really should have no bearing on how we investigate the case. And so that was really a change that was made. And I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, because many years ago, I was the sergeant over the Special Victims Unit, and we've always done it that way. We did it that way when I was in there, and I didn't recommend that change, back then. So that's one of those things where as time evolves, as people grow, as we grow in, leadership and understanding and perspective, all of those things, come to forefront. And as we look through things, we are always looking for ways we can do things better and how things are perceived and the different ways in which we as a law enforcement agency provide this service to the community.
A lot, good law enforcement is precautionary, not always reactionary.
Absolutely.
And I think of the so many systems that are meant to be put into place to avoid what happened to Lori Paige. I think about reporting and, who was looking out for her, who didn't notice. And as much as you can speak to it again without compromising the investigation,
right?
What does that look like? What failures are we seeing in our systems that a young girl could be missing and we not see her? Because there was some time between her reported missing and her being missing, I assume. And that just makes me question the systems that we have in place that are not perfect. But probably should avoid things like this from happening.
At times, I would say in Lori's case, from what we know initially and what's already been released, is that her dad was working and wasn't home that night, and when he came home the next morning, she wasn't there, which was very unusual. So during that time frame is all we have for the initial report of her missing. So I don't know that there was a failure there. There were many other dynamics that made this case a little more challenging, or a lot more challenging, from the very beginning. The biggest of those being the lack of a digital footprint. She did have a phone, but she left her phone at home. She was not very active on social media and hasn't been active on social media since. So no digital footprint obviously makes it tougher. There's family dynamics of living in 3 different states and other things that are going on that make it more challenging at times. this was the start of summer, just like we're at the start of summer now. A year later, it was the start of summer when she went missing. So the normal patterns which she would have and we could follow, she didn't have because it was summer. And so a lot of those things, along with many other things, made it much more difficult for us to find those things. And so one myth I do want to put to rest while we're talking to our community is to make sure that everyone understands there is no time delay that you have to wait if you think someone's missing. A lot of people think and believe that you have to wait 24 hours or 48 hours before you can report someone missing, and that's just not true. In fact, just the opposite is true. As soon as you believe they're missing, call us, because evidence in that case, immediately begins to become stale from the moment, it happens. So the sooner we can get to that, the sooner we can find the person, and the easier it is to find the person. So if they're missing 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, if you think they're missing, call us and let us come deal with that right away. You don't have to wait for any period of time.
Okay. And I'd love for you also to talk, what is a question, as you've been getting, I'm sure, many questions that people aren't asking you that you wish they would be asking you, whether it be about this case or about the practices, overall when it comes to your special victims unit and missing persons cases, especially those of people that are under the age of 18?
What I keep reminding our community of is the quality of law enforcement that they have. I don't think a lot of times, as we kind of consider small town Tallahassee, we just don't think of this level of law enforcement that this community is accustomed to. And that's nothing to do with me being chief or anything. We stand on the shoulders of all the giants that came before us that has propelled the Tallahassee Police Department to the national forefront in law enforcement. But we take that very seriously. We take that charge to continue that very, very seriously. And so anytime I speak to the community about SVU or about whatever unit it might be, I remind them of how successful we truly are, and how just what an incredible job that the men and women of the Tallahassee Police Department do every single day. When I talk to, I still have a lot of friends in the community. I grew up here, and so I talk to people that are quote quote on the street, and the word in Tallahassee is and has been for a while, you can commit a crime in Tallahassee, but TPD is going to get you. They're going to find you, and that's just due to the level of dedication. So it's really not about, when I talk to the community, it's really more about just reminding our community of the quality of law enforcement that they have here, and just to work with us, because the biggest reason we are successful is because we have a community that supports us. And the community, the more the community supports us, the better that relationship is, the better our community is going to be, the safer our community is going to be. There is somebody in this case that knows that piece of information. I keep saying that, and I say that all the time. And it's going to take that person in the community to come forward with that piece of information that's going to bring closure to this case and bring Lori home.
Is there any, technology or advancements? You just talked about how you all are, revered
Sure.
as a department. So I wonder, is there anything extra here in Tallahassee that gives people faith and hope that you all have more resources at your disposal, technological-wise or forensic-wise, when it comes to a case like this? Can you offer anything to us?
Well, what I can tell you is every piece of technology that we know of that would help in this case, we have already brought in and used, whether we own it or whether we get it from some of our other state, federal partners. At times they have more access to that type of equipment just because of state and federal funding. But I can assure you that there is not a piece of equipment that we would use in a case like this that we don't own or have access to and would have used in this case. Forensically, our forensics unit is amazing in the quality of work that they do. We've had, don't quote, I don't know the name of the piece of equipment, but we've taken this piece of equipment out over bodies of water, and use that to, I don't want to say, sonar or whatever it is, but whatever that technology is, we've brought that in and used that in this case. And that's just one example. Obviously, there's cadaver dogs and there's things like that we brought in from other places in the state. We made sure that we got the best team in the state to come and do that, not just any cadaver team. We got the best team in the state and brought them in to do a search. So any and all resources like that are like I say, if we don't own them, we know who does and have relationships with them to be able to bring that equipment in.
The Lori Paige case is not the only missing persons case that you all have been following. Could I get kind of like a general overview of like how many cases are you all following? Like, what is this? How typical is it for a missing persons case to be in Tallahassee? I see them come out. We have reports, and you all send it to us. Sometimes we get they'll be found, but sometimes we haven't gotten that. And so, what does it look like generally? Like, what does the caseload look like for this department when it comes to missing person cases for those under 18?
No, we have missing person cases almost every single day. Even from when, again, years and years ago, not going to say how long, but when I was in SVU, we had flyers that go out every single day. Our communications section does a phenomenal job in getting those flyers out, getting that information out many, many times. And I know they follow up always and say that person's recovered. Almost always that person's recovered the same day or the next day. But the frequency, I haven't really noticed an increase in the frequency. We still have missing persons almost every single day, sometimes multiple a day. It seems like the recovery of those persons is still a day to 2 days. There are times where there are other circumstances where these cases may go longer. An example would be where we know the location of the person. We maybe even have talked to the person and know that they're okay, but we can't take them out of the system until law enforcement places eyes on them and sees them. So if a person's missing but they're in Washington State, and even if it's a child and they're homeschooled or whatever, and the parent is not being very cooperative in letting law enforcement come see the child, we know where the child is, we are the person, we know, we've talked to them, we believe they're okay, but we can't take them out of the system until law enforcement places eyes on them. So there may be extended periods of time where they're not technically recovered, but we know they're okay. And so that's just one example of some that go longer. We have what we call tickers in place for our investigators or detectives that every so often, with a case, as it goes longer and longer, there's certain requirements that they have to do. They have to report certain things, at 15 days. They have to get a DNA sample at 30 days. They have to, collect all this. So there's different markers along the course of the investigation that are built into the technology that we use that not only, brings in evidence, but it just reminds the investigative unit and the supervisors to make sure they've already done it. Almost always those things have already been done. But again, they're just extra things, extra safeguards that we put in place to make sure that we don't miss something.
And I'm curious to know, I know that each case is unique, but when it comes to, a prolonged missing case like this, have we seen success stories or can you kind of speak to what the future looks like? I think what I'm asking for, because I know people are looking for hope, to be honest.
Sure,
we
all
are
are.
looking for hope, and you kind of sometimes find those in examples of, hey, this happened to this one person and they were recovered. Is there any hope that you can give folks when it comes to responses or successes that have happened here in this department of something that has not the same but similar in a sense?
I don't know of a specific example. I do know that there have been many times where we have recovered children and others after lengthy times missing. I will say this case is unique in the length that it's gone to this point. I was just made aware that we may have had another case previously. We're looking into that. I don't know the outcome of that. We're trying to find out that information now. But Certainly, we've had cases go longer than a day or two, which is the typical recovery time. But I'm a complete optimist. I'm going to hope on hope on hope, and just believe that until I know for a fact that the outcome is not what we want it to be, I'm going to hope for the positive outcome. And so, I hope in Lori's case, truly, that even if it's 1/10 of 1,000%, that I hope that's the outcome, And what I can assure our community is we will be as transparent as we absolutely can be. As soon as there's information that we can reveal without compromising the investigation in any way, shape, or form, we will certainly do that. But at this point, at the 1-year anniversary, we just want to make sure that our community knows that we will never give up. We will never stop looking. Our detectives are going to be as tenacious as they have been from the beginning to make sure that we bring closure to this case.